Today's topic is, as I've mentioned before, taking back tech and women in STEM. Now, I'd like to tell you that I'm well versed in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I'm, however, not. I'm unfortunately very bad at math, and I've never really been that strong in those fields, and I also didn't study in those fields. But fortunately, we did actually approach someone who is well versed in the field of science and technology, and her name is Nisha McRae. Unfortunately, she couldn't be with us physically today because she's actually delivering a workshop in Brazil, and it's really got to do with, as you know, women like that are probably, so on demand. So she's very busy delivering this workshop on something that she's actually sort of invented and an idea that she's come up with. And we'll discuss that a little bit more a bit later on. So we're going to hear from her on a pre-recorded video. So what we'll then do is there will be a couple of questions that you can just look out for on the group chat. And while we are watching that video, I'd like you to just think about those questions and how Nisha answered those questions. Reflect back on, what do you think of her answers to those questions? Do you maybe have similar experiences, any, relatable experiences? And do you maybe think that maybe if you can't answer those questions, could you possibly go out and ask someone else a young woman who maybe is involved in one of those fields, whether she relates to those questions? So that's what we're going to basically take away from today, from this conversation. But first, I'd like to actually play a special video. This video was created by the World Economic Forum, which over the past 10 years, they've been recording data of the existing global gender gap. Now, often I think when people do mention gender equality or gender inequalities in society, they think that maybe it's not so tangible. Often society thinks that, women over-exaggerate certain inequalities. It's been an existing social construct for many years. So it's difficult sometimes to define, is there really a gender disparity? Nowadays, when we have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and we know that everybody is equal, we don't necessarily see in society, is it measurable? Is that gap measurable? So the World Economic Forum actually decided to put this down statistically so that we can see, okay, how far are we to achieving gender equality? How far do we have to go? And what really are the statistics on the global gender equality? So I'm going to play you the video now. I'm going to just share my screen with you. Okay, let's see. Sorry, Julene, I'm going to ask you is it possible if you could pull up the video and share your screen?
So,
Okay.
I will pull up the gender gap video.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to watch that video now. And if anybody has any questions, I'd like you to just post it in the group, and then we can, we can just discuss it in the group or after.
All right. Is everyone able to see my screen? Okay.
The Global Gender Gap Report provides a tool for tracking gender equality over time. The index looks at 4 different categories. On health, we look at the sex ratio at birth and the gender gap on the years lost to disease and disability. On education, we're trying to understand literacy gaps as well as primary, secondary, and tertiary enrollment. On economic participation, we want to understand how many women versus men are making it into the labor force. On political empowerment, we look at the gender gap in parliament, amongst ministers, and in the executive role. In 2015, we're covering 145 countries, and not a single one of them has closed the gender gap. Iceland is at number 1, followed by Norway, Finland, and Sweden, all of whom have closed over 80% of the gender gap. Ireland pulls into the 5th spot. Rwanda moves to 6th place and becomes the highest-ranking African economy. Philippines, at number 7, becomes the highest-ranking Asian economy and one of only 2 developing countries in the top 10. The US drops to 28th place, while the UK pulls back into the top 20. South Africa is the highest ranking of the BRICS in 17th place. Japan is at 101. In the Arab world, Kuwait is the highest ranking economy at 117, followed by the United Arab Emirates at 119. This is the 10th edition of the report, so we have a decade worth of data to tell us whether the world is making progress. Out of the 109 countries that we've been covering since 2006, 94% have made progress. On political empowerment, we've made the most progress, from 14% in 2006 to nearly 24% in 2015. On economic participation, it's countries like Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Guatemala that have made the most progress. On education, Burkina Faso, Chad, and Nepal have made the most progress. There's clearly an economic imperative for educating and empowering women. But this goes beyond a nice to have. This is important for each and every individual on our planet. To have equal access to health, to education, the ability to earn a living, the ability to engage in political processes. And ultimately, that's what the Global Gender Gap Index is measuring, whether women and men are able to live up to their full potential.
Did everyone, were you able to see that? Okay, great. All right, back to you, LJ.
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that very short clip. I think that can, just put things into perspective for all of us, that this is a very serious issue. It's so that an entire world organization such as World Economic Forum decided to really put this into something tangible that, the world can take notice of. And also so that we have specific directives that we do work towards. So that's essentially what our campaign does in our shoes, and you can find out more information about that on our Facebook page. And I think we can maybe share that on our chat as well, if you'd like to just follow the link and then follow our Facebook page. It's just some of the work that we do. We really try and create awareness around achieving gender equality. For us, it's more about changing people's perceptions than having some kind of tangible socio entrepreneurship project. So for now, we're really all about changing people's perceptions of gender equality, what it is, how can it be achieved, and spreading the word about that. So having covered that, I think now it might be very important to discuss maybe we should actually, because we're quite a small group, I think maybe it would be a good idea to share a little bit about individual experiences. So we'll take maybe about 5 minutes to do that very quickly. If our guests would just like to just share maybe an individual experience that you've had where you have found existing gender discrimination or something that you've noticed in society. And then from there, we'll move to our main topic, which is that women in STEM and taking back tech. And I have a PowerPoint to show you, and from there we'll watch Nisha's video. Okay, so let's maybe take a little bit of, I'll start and I'll give you an example. So something like I've identified in my life, and it's only now recently that I've thought back to events that have happened in my life where it's indicated that there's a strong, sort of patriarchal system in place, and even at higher education institutions. So something where, for example, when I approached a professor of mine to discuss pursuing a career in political science instead of law, the professor replied to me that I would only, as a woman, I would only be successful if I was willing to pursue horizontal promotion. Now, I don't know if I need to be very straightforward with what that really meant. So basically, he was implying that I needed to sleep my way up the ladder. And because as a woman, that's the only way that I'd be able to achieve success in the political field. So sometimes it's important to be able to identify in our own lives that there are events that may have happened to you or that you may have taken notice of where, oh, you can identify that this is gender discrimination and maybe this needs to change. So I'm going to just open up the floor just for a few minutes. If we have anything, you feel free to share. If not, that's also okay. Then we can just move on to the PowerPoint. So anyone, feel free to go ahead. We'll take a few minutes for that. I see Olive desperately you want to share something, so I'm going to hand it directly over to you.
Is the experience I had in Africa. In Africa, we have cultural deprivement. Like many women, in Africa, we have a culture that a woman is always undermined. The culture has undermined the girl child. Our place in Africa, a girl child, her place is just in the kitchen. You are not supposed to be seen. So this is what happened once. I'm a Rwandese, so President Kagame always goes to villages to meet with the Rwandans, like in the village. So once I remember he came to my village where I came from in Rwanda. So what I did, I stood up when it came a time to ask questions. I stood up, I raised my hand, I said I want to ask a question. I wanted to give an idea, a suggestion, an opinion to the president. So I stood up. Okay, he said you can give your opinion. So I said, Mr. President, thank you so very much for encouraging women in Rwanda, but I would like to speak on behalf of the children, girls from poor families who grow up with low esteem, without value. So they need inspiration. They need some mentorship program in all schools in Rwanda. So I asked the president of Rwanda. It was in my village. So what happened after that? Many people from my village neighbors, they just came to me and they say, how dare you speaking in men? There were a lot of people who were supposed to speak. You were not supposed to rise up. That is degrading our culture. Women are not supposed to stand up in front of people and say, you, Mr. President, you are a girl. You are not supposed to be here speaking like. I felt very humiliated, and I felt ashamed that I spoke in front of people. I was like, maybe I should have not asked my question to the president. And it was a big shame for me, because everywhere they were saying, this girl loved to show up, and she's not respecting the culture, because African culture is saying that a girl child should be in the kitchen. You should not be seen in the public. You should not speak. You should always be quiet and follow the rules. Prepare food for your brothers. Prepare food for your elders. You're not supposed to speak publicly. So that was my experience. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for that. It's not a personal experience of mine, but it was actually one of my lecturers. So I studied law, and one of our lecturers, she was just speaking about how when she got into law, and she's now a professor in the law, and she obviously lectures us and things like that. And she said, when she started, she went to those tests that tell you what you should study and things like that, and those tests came back and they said no, that she must be a secretary. So she said, no, this is not something I want to do. I want to do law. And they said, okay, no, we'll do the tests again and see. And she said they did it again, and again it came back that no, she must be a secretary or something in admin or something like that. And she said, no, I want to do law. And the people just said to her, it's a man's career. You're never going to make it anywhere. And I mean, now she's a professor, she's studying, she's done so much, when luckily she didn't say, no, okay, I'm just going to be a secretary, but she actually went further and said, okay, I'm still going to do this nonetheless. So I think it's also something that we need to be able to do with ourselves, is have that courage, like you standing up and actually speaking to the president, instead of just saying, oh no, it's not my place. We need to realize, make our own places, and don't just take for granted that, okay, this is where I need to be. that's my split.
Okay. Well, thank you both so much for that. Evelyn, I'm maybe going to just hand it over to you. Just even if you want to pass a comment on what's just been said, maybe something about like social constructs, about gender equality, and anything that you think that you may or may not be doing for gender equality awareness, or even if it's an experience yourself. So anything you might want to just to add.
Hi, everyone. I'm very glad to share with you and to listen all your experiences. In the particular case of Mustoni, I really feel similar discrimination process, because when we talk about discrimination, gender discrimination, we have to recognize where is our position in the society, where we belong. And I came from Mexico, so there is like, you as a woman, you can just see us as a secretary or as a teacher just at the elementary school. But when you are trying to get, to go to a master's degree or a PhD, a lot of people, they say like, why are you going that? Why you just don't get married and have kids and have a family and all this stuff? It's just like, there is also a big gap about what are the opportunities as a woman, as a professional, because woman is just seen as a mother who, all this social background and all the social roles that you have to have just because of your gender. I think that what that really affects me was a lot of, my emotions and also my self-esteem, that I know I'm almost 30 years old and all of my friends, they are married and they have kids. And all the time when I'm back to Mexico, they ask me the same. When are you get married? When are you have kids? They never just care if I have papers, how I'm feeling about my classes, I'm very excited, for example, when I find like an article that really inspired me, but it's very sad that you can just find someone to really appreciate what that means for you. It's very sad that you as a woman, you just have a value when you have kids or when you get married. When I was accepted in a PhD, for me, I don't know. I mean, I've never been married, right? But for me, it was just such happiness. It was just like my dream. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to California to study my PhD. And I was very surprised that I didn't receive like enough support of a lot of friends, So I think that when you are growing in your professional career, in your professional story, you have to have a lot of convictions in yourself. You have to really be, focus on, okay, my social structure is telling me that I have to do this, but I want to go far away. I want to do something new. And that doesn't mean that I'm less woman, and that doesn't mean that I'm not a feminist or, like I cannot be a mother. It just means that I'm reconstructing the conditions about what a woman could be. I just want to really motivate, like people in my family. I'm the first woman who is studying a master's degree, to finish a master's degree, and I'm the first one who studied a PhD. There is like a kind of intellectual legacy that I really appreciate, and I think that to empower women, we have to recognize what are their own like the abilities, but also what are their strengths, what are these things that really allows them to go so far. So that's my experience. Thank you.
Well, I think it's so wonderful to hear from everybody's different experiences, because there's that common thread of, is there, even if we have accomplished gender equality, do we have the opportunity to pursue what we want? And even if we could pursue what we want, like you said, pursuing a master's or get your PhD, that's something that you've pursued that opportunity. But now, does your society support, or your family or your friends support, breaking out of the social constructs that already exist? So, and that's so important to do, that we change the perceptions in society so that it becomes more possible for women to do that. So that's what we're going to really be discussing today, is the social constructs that inhibit women from exceeding in STEM, the sciences, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and how do we really, create awareness around trying to dismantle these barriers to a woman's achievement in those fields. And also, what can women lend to those fields? Why should we invest more so in women in those fields than what we do in males in those fields? Okay. Hi, Tiamo. It's nice to see you join the conversation. We just watched a video on the global gender gap. It was a study done by the World Economic Forum. So you will find that on our Facebook page if you'd like to catch up and watch it. So I'm going to move on very quickly then to a PowerPoint that I've prepared. This PowerPoint is really going to show us just the existing inequalities around technology and the sciences specifically, and in those fields. So you'll notice something like the pay for women in those fields is actually less than than males that work in those fields, and that sort of thing. So we're going to look at that, and then we're going to look at, okay, so how can we, like I've mentioned, dismantle these barriers, and why should we? And then we're going to hear from our very special guest speaker, Nisha McRae, who's going to just answer a couple of questions that we did post on the chat. She's going to just respond to those questions, and then that will just help us in understanding what are other women currently doing in this field, and what are they achieving. So let me share with you my PowerPoint. I think it's this one. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Okay, so women in technology, a formula for success. Why should we be more invested in women in these fields? So the real reason why we came up with the idea of Take Back Tech for this particular forum is that the current situation is really the following, that women, they have less access to even internet resources than what men do. So this could obviously lead to other barriers, for example, like even career opportunities, or maybe access to information and that sort of thing. So even the lack of access to technology can inhibit women's progression in society. And even something like owning a mobile phone, if you think of how many apps you have on your phone, and what those particular apps do for you and how it helps you get through your day, imagine not being able to have access to your phone, and how many women are so much more less likely to own a phone than what a man does. And this in itself could inhibit a woman from certain points of progression. So that's even something like maybe even I was reading an article that said that women who don't have maybe something like cell phone banking or mobile or internet banking, they often what they'll do is they'll often have to give over certain savings or their savings to a man at home, and this inhibits them from starting their own savings because they feel pressurized by certain members in their family to give over their money. So this obviously, like internet and technology itself, can lead to women's empowerment, and that's why it's important for women to also be sort of greater members and in these fields, the STEM fields, because these women who are actively involved in STEM will then obviously lead to the progression of women who maybe are not necessarily in those fields but are affected by those fields. So this, obviously, then this is a reflection of that. So technology reflects the people who make it. Currently, most technology is designed by men. And then also that although women receive about 36% of STEM PhDs, they make up only about 18% of full professors in science and engineering. And I think, Evelyn, this is something that maybe will really resonate with you, is that in the actual profession or even in academia, there's a less representation of women in STEM. And really, I think it's really up to us as society to ask ourselves, ask these questions and to pose these questions to higher education institutions and to the field itself. Why aren't there more, professionals in this field that are women? And then this, could also be that this inequality is also reflected in what women get paid in these fields. So even in high-paying STEM jobs, women are being shortchanged. So women in engineering are paid only the 82% of what their male counterparts are paid, and women in computing are paid only 87% of what their male counterparts are paid. So this is important, again, why it's good for us to stress that we should be focusing on women specifically in this field. And then I thought this was just interesting, but this is something that relates to me because I have a legal background. Despite progress, gender disparities remain, so that there are 943 laws that limit women's economic opportunities. And I think that also just speaks again to, even if we provided young women and girls with the educational opportunities in fields of STEM, if we're not removing other barriers to economic opportunities or career opportunities, then we're still not going to see a woman's progression in the career world, regardless of whether it's in STEM fields or any other, maybe in politics or higher paying positions in companies and that sort of thing. So it's important that we remove all these barriers. And then referring back to the global gender gap, at the current rate, it will take 75 years to close the gender wage gap. How can we close the gap faster? So that's important to stress. And I think what we will really see from Nisha's work and Nisha's video, that women who are equipped with this knowledge, either in the scientific or technology field, they have become social entrepreneurs using that skill that they have and the knowledge that they have to really drive economic empowerment for young women. So again, so important for us to really just invest in women in those particular fields. Okay, so that is really the truth about why little girls need STEM toys. Just stressing that this should also come from an educational point of view. We need to also question, okay, why shouldn't we also be focusing on providing little girls with toys that may reflect, some, or may even instill an interest in the fields of science and technology and engineering. I thought that this was also just very quite interesting, that it just is a reflection again of STEM in society. Obviously, this just applies to the US. So women, why it's important for us to really promote women in STEM is because women in STEM, they earn 33% more than those in non-STEM jobs, although again, now there's less representation of those women in the STEM fields than what they are in other jobs. So if we could see an increase, then we could obviously see an increase in the economic empowerment of women. And this was the, I'm sure you recognize this, maybe you recognize this picture from the event page, but to invest in these STEM projects, both globally and particularly for the interests of young women and girls. And this is really because investing in women and girls in STEM invests in the entire community and in the entire society, because we have statistics like more startups, women-led startups actually have a higher turnover. Even companies that have been found to be more gender diverse have a higher turnover than companies who aren't. So this is so important, why we also share this information with the world around us, so that people can really sensitize themselves to this information and pass it on to people who are building businesses or are starting companies and employing other people, so that this really becomes a movement. So a lot of information to take in right now. We will be watching Nisha's video soon, but this is just really to give you a background of the importance why promotion, the importance for the promotion in STEM. And then this, I think we will get to this again after Nisha's video, but this is really something that we just came up with, our campaign, within STEM. So this is what we'd like to work towards, just you to think of during this forum, is one, how do we create awareness around this issue? Like, what could the possible solutions be? The second is education. So if we, for example, aren't being able to give basic education to young women and girls, especially in, for example, parts in Africa, how are we supposed to even achieve education in the STEM fields? And I know that's something that particularly in South Africa we're finding a serious issue with, because there are many under-resourced schools that can't give subjects such as mathematics, or they can only give basic math subjects, or they can't offer science to any of these students because they're so under-resourced. So they don't have the equipment and they don't have teachers. And this obviously then adversely affects how many young girls are going to pursue careers in STEM. So we have education, and how would we deal with that? Then the third one is skills. What sort of skills should women should be learning more skills in these fields? Even if you, for example, your tertiary education wasn't necessarily in this field, should women strive to develop more skills in these fields? And then the fourth one is to be tech savvy, and that really we could maybe take some time to describe that a bit after our video, but that really is just to get people thinking, and our audience now to think of how would we use technology to help us drive this gender equality campaign. So something like a social media campaign, how successful would it be? How would we go about doing that using technology? Because being more tech savvy can lead to being a better advocate for gender equality awareness. So that is, if I could maybe just stop the share. Okay, great. Okay, so that's just the basic background of the gender equality awareness within STEM itself. Again, I'll reiterate that I don't have extensive knowledge in these particular fields, only from what I've researched. So if you're going to ask me a particular question about the molecular makeup of some chemical, I'm not going to be able to answer that at all. But I would maybe like us to, if we can just see time-wise, we could perhaps just take a few questions from the audience based on what I've just shared with you, and then we could just maybe see if we can answer a couple of those questions, or just sort of have a conversation around those questions for about 5 minutes, and then we'll move on to watching the video of Nisha, and then we'll take the conversation from there. Okay, so if anyone would like to share something, I think based on that, any questions that I could even maybe, if I can't answer, I could take it down and take it to my expert, as I like to call her, Nisha, as my expert in that field, because I have no idea what I'm talking about when it comes to science and technology. So if there are any questions, please let me know, and we'll take it straight to Nisha. So I'll just open the floor up for anybody, if you have any questions, responses as well, any comments.
I have a question. As I mentioned before, for my dissertation project, I'm focused on explore the professional identity of faculty members. And for the development of a professional identity, you have to have a socialization process before that. You know, like this socialization process used to be at the graduate school. Sometimes it's in the PhD for the STEM fields. So I would like to know, where do you think that this socialization process in the 4 elements that you mentioned could be related? Because when I talk about socialization process, is that when this woman will learn the values, the practices, and the meanings about these professions, you know, because STEM fields is I don't know, like 80% characterized by male perspective and male values. So when we talk about how to empower this kind of population, we have to think about this cultural change too, you know. So, well, that's my question.
Full disclaimer, I'm not an expert in this field. But I think what I would say from what I've sort of read up on, and also I think what Nisha's video might sort of attest to, is that this often the sort of curiosity for those fields, I think, is really instilled when you're a young girl. So I think it's important to create environments where you can actually identify that curiosity and harness it, build on it, be able to create a sort of an environment where that curiosity is cultivated. I think that's important, and I don't think maybe that we are doing that in our schools, and I think many under-resourced schools don't even do that in, you know, with most of these students, because they just don't have the resources. So it's important, you know, to be able to create environments where can you create an interactive space where this curiosity can really be explored and cultivated. So that's something like, if you would see, you know, if you could just recall the PowerPoint, that you know, how do maybe there's a need for girls, sort of certain, I don't know, toys or someone to come up with a product where you can, you know, play and learn at the same time. You know, wow, who thought that was possible? Something like that. So, you know, how do we incorporate science with play, and how do we make that available to young women? You know, well, maybe there's a idea for you know, one of us out there. Maybe we can explore that. But yeah, it's something like that. Like, have we really challenged ourselves as a society to think about these issues, to address them, to find solutions for them? But yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's got to do with that socialization, your first socialization. So first socialization would be those experiences with your family. It's experiences in, you know, the intermediate phase of your school career, your first school experiences. And that's I think where we need to be able to step in and address this gap where we're not meeting that curiosity with actual awareness of these fields. Like you say, how do we create more awareness about, oh, what are these fields? What do they do? Instead of saying, I want to be a rocket scientist one day. Well, what is a rocket scientist? Or does it even exist? Yeah, and what do they contribute to society? So just to create, that they have more awareness. And this also speaks to something that Olive actually mentioned earlier, that being a mentor. So if we could get more women who are really, sort of experts in these fields, the STEM fields, if we could get those women to mentor younger women, then that will immediately fulfill that gap of creating an awareness. But that's just my opinion. Just what I think from what I've read up on and from what I sort of have experienced and that sort of thing. So I mean, I could be off the mark, but that's what I think. Anybody else? I don't know if anybody else agrees with me, or maybe there's something else to add. So anybody else? I'm going to just open the floor. Any more other questions apart from maybe this? Any responses?
Is Olive, are you trying to?
Yes, I was trying to add on something. Yes, I think I would suggest that it should be it should be something to do with changing the mentality, the way we think, the way women think, and to change the way they think. It has to do with from the background. What were we told when we were young? Which environment did we grow up in? Because in my little experience, I have realized that when a girl or a woman does not have any other assets to give out, the only asset she has is her body. So that's when girls they start to go through different immorality actions. So because when you grow up, when you are a little girl, multicultural, like Muslim culture, Muslim countries or Africa, you realize that many girls are treated in a certain way, which brings them to have a low esteem. And that low esteem leads them to early marriage, low performance in the schools. So when you realize, you see, like, if there is, like me in high school, I did mathematics and physics in the high school. But because in the university, I did not have like a mentor or someone. I wanted to do IT in a university, but in my culture, when I was still in Rwanda, I was not thinking this way. It was a long process for me to come at the point I'm thinking right now. Because if I was thinking like this when I finished my high school, I could have done IT because I really loved it, but I got a lot of discouragement. When I finished high school, I was telling people I want to do IT, and everyone was telling me, you can't do it. Just do social work, do social studies, become a teacher. That's better for you. You will not do it. No one will employ you. It was a lot of discouragement. So because I did not have someone to awaken my mind, so I decided and I did social sciences in the university, and in the high school I did mathematics and physics. So we need to do some encouragement, mentorship program to mentor a child, a girl, when she's still young. She knows that there is no difference between her and a man. If she wants to do science, yes, the door are open for her. If she wants, and we have to come up with a system, an awareness, or a mentorship program to encourage girls to involve in technology, because the world is moving fast towards technology, and technology is going to lead the world in every sector. That's why we have to encourage women, girls, to do science, to go into technology studies, so we will have a future or a generation of women in technology. Maybe Bill Gates could have been a woman. Maybe we can get a Bill Gates who is a woman. It's possible, by the way. It is really possible. But we need to start from the beginning of a child to show girls that there is no limitation. If you want to be a scientist, if you want to do technology, there is no limit for that child, because it has to do with something we were settled in our mind when we were young or when we were little girls. Thank you.
Okay. It also looks like Chiamo is raising his hand. Feel free to unmute yourself and jump in.
Okay, hi, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Are you hearing me very well? Okay, great. So in physical science, IT, and mathematics, I'm going to pursue a degree in astrophysics, and I'm also going to do a whole lot of programming after school. So I'm going to be heavily involved in STEM. I've actually got two questions. The first relates to the presentation that we saw. So horrendous figures about the pay gap in STEM field. So I just want to know a bit more context about that, because this would apply to women who are employed, but is it also a problem when women are like self-employed and they're the employers, like when they go to a company and they say, okay, we'll do the IT for you. In those situations, do they still get paid less than like male-headed company that goes to that same company and says, I'm going to do your network or something for you? Because if it's just the case of like when they're employed, then wouldn't there be a kind of solution in encouraging women to start their own IT companies and therefore being the employers? But if the problem also exists in like when female-headed companies are still being paid less than male-headed companies, then okay, that wouldn't be so much of a solution. But I think, would it be possible to just encourage women to like start the companies and be the employers? That way they wouldn't have those pay disparities. I mean, especially like in the place where we are now, there's so much space for development in IT field. I mean, things like programming is a kind of field where it's not like easy, but like there's lots of space for you to like start up. You know, tech startups are like this common phrase. And I think if we just encourage more tech startups rather than going to find employment under some horrible pay gap disparity, maybe there might be a little bit of a solution there. My second question is like, what kind of role men should play in fixing this kind of problem? So you know, I think you want to shy away from being too active in like mandating how it should be solved, how these kind of problems should disappear. So the second question is really like, what kind of role can like someone like me who's going to go into STEM, like almost all the letters of STEM, how do I like play some kind of active role in solving this kind of problem?
Okay, I'm assuming you're directing your question to me. So because I did the research and I put a PowerPoint together. Okay, so Tiamo, I'm going to answer your second question first, and the reason being is because it's slightly easier to answer. So your second question: how would you know young men essentially, or men in the fields, how would they really be able to contribute to the progression of women in these fields? And I don't think that it does lie in, you know, pulling out of the field itself, or okay, now less men should be involved in STEM, because it's something that's so important for advancement of society. So it's important actually that we have more people, regardless of what their gender is, involved in those fields of STEM. So that's definitely not the solution. Not that I'm saying that you propose that solution. I'm just saying, okay, that wouldn't be an option. What would be an option? I think maybe what would be an option is to encourage those men to act as mentors, academic mentors. So that would be, I think, especially in the stages of actually studying in these fields, are there enough men that are sort of really acting as, individual mentors to these young students or aspiring young women in those fields? Also, just being able to encourage them instead of breaking them down or saying, instead of barring them to the fields, are they maybe even making special provision for them in the field? So I think that's something that men already involved in those fields can do. Someone perhaps like you could, because you are very intelligent, I know, and you maybe you do well in those, you do very well in those subjects, physical science, mathematics. Even if you got maybe an all-boys school and the top achievers in science and math, to help a girls' school that, and maybe there are some struggling students there. What if they could help that all-girls school? Or even a school that doesn't have resources. So it could be an all-boys school that a couple of guys who do really well in math and science, and they go and help an underprivileged school where they don't have the resources. Maybe they don't have science textbooks. Maybe there could be a drive to help. I would say copy your textbooks and give it to the students, but that's bad because there's copyright, and so you shouldn't do that. But just something like, maybe let's start a tutoring program, or even if it was an extra class in the holidays where you could just, learn from each other. So I think it doesn't even what we can do doesn't necessarily have to be gender specific. It doesn't have to be the case of a guy should do this and a woman should do that. It shouldn't have to be all boys school should start a science and math camp for underprivileged students. It shouldn't be that. It should be, if you're privileged enough to be good in even, young women who are privileged in that they excel in maths and science, and they have the opportunity and the environment to excel, and they have that support. They should perhaps create an opportunity for someone else, another learner, younger than them or their age, where they can assist that learner to excel. So I think it's just being a little bit more community orientated in learning in those fields. But again, I don't have expertise in that, so that would maybe just be a suggestion. I think there's definitely a call for higher education institutions like universities to be able to reach out to their secondary schools in that area that really are sort of under-resourced in math, science, and technology and that sort of thing. So that's important. Then your first question, which is quite a long question, but let's see if I can answer it. Okay, so your first question was the gender, that was the pay gap in these fields. And your question was, okay, is this measured in terms of employment in the fields, or is it measured in terms of actual companies? I'm not entirely sure. So I'd have to get specific, to be completely honest, I'd have to get specific data that represents that. But I do think that either way, it could be both. So it could be, either that there aren't as many, because there aren't as many women-headed tech companies. The results show that they seem to have a higher turnover or better results. There aren't many of them. So maybe it is that, should we be, okay, so why aren't more women pursuing that? Why aren't they starting companies where, a tech company, it's women-headed, women, mostly females in top management? I simply think that it's because there aren't enough women in that field to start with. So it could be that. It also could be something that has come up before, the confidence in that field. So do women have the confidence to start their own tech company? Do they believe that they're going to succeed, as opposed to the male counterparts or a male-headed company? So there's something, maybe there's that exists as well. So how do we, maybe the solution lies then in, are women confident in this field? Are we making efforts to make sure that they do feel confident to do those sorts of things? In terms of employment, I do think that it is, I'm not entirely sure why it's still an existing to progression and further opportunities for women, but across the board, regardless of actually whether it's in STEM or other sectors, women still are being paid less. So that's just a phenomenon that is part of the course of gender inequality. But, just as any other sector, we should make efforts to improve that. And that's simply just making sure that your policy, your company policy, is in line with, the labor law, where everyone gets equal pay, regardless of whether you're male or female. But remember, some laws, it differs from country to country. So in South Africa, we have we have equitable labor laws. But in another country, they might not necessarily have laws that are going to ensure that women do get equal pay. Even if we look at South Africa on the Global Gender Gap Report, the reason I think is why we're so high is because the law itself promotes a gender equitable society. But other countries may not necessarily have that in their law, so they rely on practice. Are we practicing more equitable labor policy? Are we practicing this in our company or in our society? And then it becomes more about social practices than the law itself. Yes. I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, you can let me know, and we can always maybe find an actual expert to support questions. If there are no more questions on the specific, sorry.
If no one else is gonna jump in at this moment, I actually so what really caught my eye was in your presentation, LJ, the statistic about the 943 laws that limit economic opportunity. I'd be so curious to know if they outright explicitly discriminate against women, or if using some kind of lawyer lingo, they're able to indirectly limit these opportunities, because I imagine it would be a little more subtle and indirect if these 943 laws are able to continue existing without catching any attention. So yeah, I think this makes me wonder how maybe, I know nothing about lawyering, so you probably know more about this, LJ, but I wonder how maybe certain law terms maybe need to be revisited, or the language we use in forming laws can be extremely discriminating, maybe even unintentionally, or if there's ways to I have no idea how that works, but that statistic just really caught my eye, and it's a little scary actually.
So true, Julene. Again, not an expert, but I have a little bit of knowledge on something like that. And those are particularly the global laws. So if we're talking about, your national legislation, laws that are unique to your country, then maybe it's a little bit more explicit, as, the discrimination itself and the wording explicit, but something like, if I can just give an example of international laws, we have something like the even Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. So gender equality is limited to females. It's limited to women and girls. I mean, it's something that we've decided to adopt for our campaign, is that we limit gender equality focus to women and girls. But something like that doesn't necessarily, I mean, making that the UN agenda and an international policy that countries should follow also doesn't necessarily make room for, or it really actually promotes gender polarity instead of gender sort of neutrality, or a gender fluidity, getting people used to the idea of, okay, well, actually it's meant for everyone in society, regardless of whether you associate yourself with a certain gender stereotype or a certain gender orientation. So it's something, something like that. Also, laws like you'll find trade laws. So that's something I have looked into before, is where there's certain trade laws that they're written in a way that things are very loosely something like human rights, certain human rights provisions aren't written into some trade laws. So some countries can trade with each other and freely, and that country, and this could be produce that was maybe produced in a country where women don't necessarily have rights. And so let's give an example, so make it a little bit more tangible. So let's say in Indonesia, we don't have equal labor rights for women. So these laborers are maybe not, especially in the textile industry, they're not being paid the same as what men are. And we find that most of it is actually performed by women. Now they aren't earning the same as men. Okay, so they're being economically marginalized and aren't afforded the same opportunities. And this has further ramifications of not being educated, etc. Then you have maybe a country like, let's say, the UK. And the UK is buying textiles from Indonesia. There is no, within maybe that trade agreement between the UK and Indonesia, there's no sort of written human rights provision that says, okay, all laborers or laborers who are producing this certain type of textile should all be paid, whatever let's say a salary. Okay. There's that, because that human rights provision doesn't exist, it means that in practice, companies in the UK and Indonesia don't have to adhere to human rights provisions. Although it all exists, it's almost like this mystical thing, the human rights. So it's this mystical element in the world that exists, and we all know about it. But are we really in society? Is this actually happening? Because why then? We shouldn't have so many human rights violations, or gender discrimination, if it does exist on paper, if we do have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So, yeah, it's important to address something like that, the laws that actually exist in society and how we dismantle those. But it's very technical, I think, when it comes to international law, because there's, in itself, like it's so difficult to find binding power. Because you have to get the consent of every country for them to actually be bound by that law. And sometimes if they don't see it as profitable for them, so if they're going to be losing out on profits, then they're not necessarily going to want to give their consent or ratify something that is going to economically affect them. Yeah, so that's something, but I'm not an expert. That's just what I've read up on. So yeah, if there are any further questions, then we can take them now. Otherwise, I think maybe we can move on to watching the video that Nisha sent us. So maybe to you, Julene, if you have any further comments.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you for that extra insight on law. What you said about trade was particularly interesting. So now I'm going to try to share the video. Let me know if you can all see my screen. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay.
Hi guys, this is Nisha. I'm coming to you live from Belo Horizonte, Brazil. So sorry I couldn't participate in this webinar live, but I didn't want to take the chance in case there was a funky Wi-Fi connection. But I wanted to take the time to share a little bit about my experience being a social entrepreneur, in particular, a woman of color in the STEM field doing social ventures and social entrepreneurship. And so I wanted to answer a couple of questions that you guys had emailed me prior. The first question is, do you think you are faced with challenges as a woman in the field of science and tech compared to men? And I guess you guys already know my answer to that, of course. Because when people have in their head from years and years of television, radio, magazines, textbooks, what have you, that someone in STEM is supposed to be a man, and preferably a man of European descent, when you present yourself as a STEM professional or someone who works in STEM and you don't fill that box or check off those type of boxes, then someone goes, are you really someone in STEM because you're not a guy? Do you really know what you're talking about? Because are you educated in the West? Did you go to prestigious university? And on the one hand, I understand it. It's just like if you were to go into a McDonald's and someone who was a Michelin star chef was cooking your meal, you'll go, okay, that's great, but I'm not sure if you have experience cooking my Big Mac. So on the one hand, I do understand why there's some challenges, such as you have to be twice as good as your male counterparts to show that you're actually qualified to teach engineering or to even be entrusted to do a workshop for children or what have you. But on the other hand, I believe we live in a diverse world, and I don't think particular career choice is limited because of your background or what kind of gender you happen to be born with. So, of course, there are challenges. The issue is realizing that those challenges exist and figuring out workarounds until you can change someone's mind or perspective or broaden their horizons to realize that you don't have to just be a male of European descent in order to do engineering and science. The second question you guys emailed me was, what do you think organizations should do to lend more support to STEM programs directed at young women and girls? And I can speak on my experience, which is working with the State Department and the American Corner in the Cape, which is a space offered in Cape Town, South Africa, that allows for young girls and women to come and experience what is STEM, what's science, what's technology, what's engineering. And they do that through my social venture, Bujika. And we do activities with them in which we explain how do you create a simple electronic circuit, what is a mobile app, how do you develop a mobile app, and things of that nature. And I feel a lot of organizations feel if you're going to support young girls and women, the first thing you need to support is health, which I totally agree. Health is more important than education. However, it's not the end all be all. If you're going to support young girls and women, supporting their health, great. Housing, awesome. Sanitation, awesome. However, you can't just support women and young girls in those three areas because you can have the healthiest person on earth, but if you do not educate them or you allow their mind to starve, then pretty much what quality of life are you giving them? And what I like to mention to a lot of people is you don't even have to put out thousands of dollars. A simple program to just introduce people to basic concepts in STEM doesn't have to cost you an arm and a leg. And no one needs to know how to create oxygen or how to create water from a couple of chemicals in a lab. But everyone needs to understand those basic concepts in order to go through life. And some people, when I go to get fundraising and things, they go, well, STEM shouldn't be a high priority for young girls and women because we have other things to worry about. And I go, no one studies STEM just because they want to find the next Higgs boson particle or what have you. STEM allows people to understand how to think critically in situations. It It allows people to be able to problem solve when given very limited resources or materials. Because STEM teaches you how to turn a problem into a solution. It's a process of thinking. It's not just knowing this fact and knowing that fact. That is the importance of STEM to young women and girls. And so organizations who help support the critical thinking component of STEM is how they can support young women and girls who can then take the next step and become a scientist and become an engineer. And you don't need to have UN funding or what have you to support young women and girls. Even just taking a couple of wires from old pieces of trash like I do, and taking a magnet from an old refrigerator, like centerpiece, what have you, can teach thousands of concepts to someone versus saying, oh, we need to focus just on sanitation and feminine hygiene, if that makes any sense. And finally, how do you make such projects sustainable? So for us at Vajika, we actually had faced this question a couple years ago on how to make our work sustainable. And it may sound kind of common sense like, but we decided that we wanted to maintain our operations locally. So we have a local team, for example, in Cape Town, South Africa, who actually creates do-it-yourself kits in order to fund our educational programs and projects in the Cape Town area. So for example, one of our famous ones and our initial one is Solar USB Charger Kit that allows someone to assemble a charger that allows them to power their phone via solar power. And that kit allows us to support at least 10 students in one of our educational programs, either at the American Corner in the Cape in Cape Town, or even here in Brazil when we're doing workshops to teach kids how do you think like an engineer to create products for your community or solutions for your community via hardware. And so that's how we made our work sustainable. Other people have made their work sustainable by making sure that the community gets involved. And so you can have a local teacher or someone who's educated in STEM lead a workshop, and then other people in the community pay a small fee to cover their materials in order to make sure there isn't a hole that's being built up because of materials. And then all of a sudden you're looking at your couple $1,000s in debt, and there's no way to actually make these kind of projects sustainable. But I hope that kind of answered your questions. Let me know if you have any more. And good luck on this live webinar. I hope I was of some use to you guys.
All right. Did that video work out for everyone? It was amazing. Nisha is so articulate. It was, yeah. All right, so I'll mute myself and turn it back over to you, LJ and Kiara.
Okay, yeah, I really hope that everybody was able to actually watch it and hear clearly what Nisha had to say. And for me, it's just so amazing how she's really taken what she's learned in, the STEM fields and able to implement that back into so many diverse communities, and especially for young women and girls in under-resourced areas. So that's really incredible. Nisha, someone I really look up to, especially someone who's a successful social entrepreneur. It would have been amazing if she was here, so unfortunately she isn't able to join us. But if there are any questions you maybe have for Nisha personally, I'd love for you to share that on our Facebook page. And then you could even, tag Nisha if you would like to, or you could share it with me so that I could post it on the Facebook page and ask her to answer back to you. So if you do have any questions for her personally, please post it on either this chat or our Facebook group. You could even email me. So that would really be wonderful. And then I think maybe if, we could just take any comments that anybody has on what Nisha did share with us. I'm going to just open the floor up because I think everybody's sick of hearing my voice now. So I think I'm just going to open the floor up. Feel free to just jump right in and share any thoughts you have on what Nisha had to share with you, and particularly with the work that she's actually doing in the field of STEM.
Hi. I really appreciate that she emphasized the role of education have, because sometimes people just emphasize the importance of health, the importance of housing, or the importance of food. But we have seen in our in our history, how the societies who really have more investment in education have a higher social development too, right? Because when we talk about education, we talk about all these skills, social skills, emotional skills, but also this cognitive skills that people is able to have. And of course, that all these mentions really impact in the kinds of complexity or critical thinking in individuals, right? So I think that I really appreciate this video because she emphasizes that STEM fields allows to have this critical thinking, but also allow us to resolve problems, right? That it's like, how could we really apply this knowledge to resolve social needs? So for me, it's just amazing, and I think that education have to increase the opportunities, and also that policymakers have to emphasize this role of that education have, and in relation with the specific in the kinds of STEM fields, because we talk about that there is gender inequalities, but we also have to recognize that all these social needs that can't be successfully covered by the knowledge that is developed by people who is working in these fields.
That's so true, you know, with education. And it's what I found very interesting from what Nisha said was that, you know, how she even spoke about teaching young individuals about the STEM and things like that, but with using just a magnet from the fridge and wires from the trash. You know, it's something, education doesn't cost anything. It's something that you can do for free. It's something that it's so sustainable because it's something that you'll have forever. It can't be taken away, you know. So I think that was something that was so important that was just brought through, that, you know, with education, with limited amount of funds, it's not impossible to actually, you can actually go further with less than trying to constantly get all this money to make all these big things, but actually nobody's learning anything and nothing's being sustainable. So I found that very, very enlightening.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I did also like that whole fact when she brought up, you know, how simple it can be for us to have good educational campaigns in STEM. But one concern I do have is, even if it you don't require a lot of monetary capital, there's also the problem of having to have like social capital and backing. Like, so if we were to, like, say, start up a project where I am and go into under-resourced schools, which are kilometers away, we're going to need to get some kind of social backing to organize the whole thing together, get them to want to buy into it, take us seriously, and all of that. So my question is, let's say we wanted to do something similar to what she's doing here. Would there be a way for us to, like, get her social capital behind us? Like, say that this is a project that is supported by Nita's. I can't remember what the name of her thing was. So would that kind of thing be possible? Because then it would be way easier for us to start up something here and employ the methods that she's employing if we had that kind of social backing and said, okay, here's someone who's already tried this thing, here's someone successfully in Cape Town, in Brazil, and this person is backing us now, so we can do it in Blown, wherever we are. I think that's, like, to make it easier. And my second thing is, how can we get hold of one of those solar chargers?
Do you want to answer that, LJ?
No, you can. You can.
Okay. Well, I don't know if it's going to fully answer the question, but my view on, you know, getting the social backing, it would be something where we would partnership with Nisha. We'd be able to use her expertise, but also, you know, it's something like with us, we've got a campaign and we've got social backing with our campaign. So it's things like that where you actually don't realize where there is funds that you could actually gain funds from. So even if we have money from our campaign, some of the other campaign winners, they've got something, and we can all just link in because we all have this kind of funding, and it comes in even with, you don't always have to go to a big corporation or something like that, but through Nisha, she will also have different avenues that we can go through. So it's just all about partnerships and being able to connect instead of trying to start a whole own process. And with the second question, I think we're just going to have to ask Nisha to get a link, I think maybe on the Facebook or something, and then we can get one of those batteries. I don't know if that answers your question fully, but I think that's the most important elements that we can try and do. I don't know if you maybe add, LJ.
Oh no, I just wanted to add, are you asking because we have a serious problem with energy in our country, or do you want it because we have load shedding? No, okay, well, on a more serious note, I also want to ask you, well, Tiamo, if you really want to start a project like that, we would happily give you the social capital to start a project like that, because we could put you in touch with people. So if it is something that you are very interested in, then please contact us, because we would love to support a project like that and to see where we can link you to other people. And it's exactly what Kiara said, just being able to network and partner with different people and different organizations. So yeah, and I think that goes for any project really. I mean, if anybody else wants to start something on their campus, let us help you create links between the organizations that we are already in contact with and that we are already partnering with. So if we can do that, then that already helps you help us drive our cause, which is essentially just gender equality, and whatever aspect you decide to tackle within that, or to address within gender equality, then that's completely up to you. So, and that's also why we need collaboration between the different fields. So someone who is well versed in education or in the STEM fields, regardless of what your field is, you can in some way you can lend to that gender equality awareness. Yes, so that's all I think. If any more questions, anybody else, feel free to just jump in. Maybe if I could just pose a question to the audience, perhaps if we think of those 4 last points, being the awareness, education, skills, and being tech savvy, what do you think maybe according to maybe some of Nisha's tips and what you also think, do you think that it's possible to use those 4 points in some sort of way to create more gender equality, even if it's not in STEM, maybe in your own fields? What do you think that you can, within those 4 points, what do you think that you can take out of this global forum?
Well, I think there's always this perception that it's very difficult to get a project running, or when it's something that's got a huge impact, like solving gender inequality, that it's just a big and near impossible task. So I think lots of things are more clear about the kinds of things that we might or I might be able to do. Obviously, with other people, creating those partnerships, which I think it's a really good idea. So I think what I think I took from this meeting was a bit more hope on what power a few of us can do, but still have a huge impact. Not like having to have this huge company with lots of funding in order to do something. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tiamo, and thank you again for joining, really, and all your input in this forum. I'm going to just open the floor again to anybody else who'd like to jump in. Anything that you even think that you learned today and from Nisha's video, and anything you would like to add and or like to share with us, something that you specifically think that you can take out of this forum.
Oh, hi. Well, I really, as I said before, I really appreciate the 4 elements that you that you talk about, but also in this video, like the role of education, right? But when she talked about work locally, I would like to know if you talk about role models in the local place. I mean, if you contact like women who are working in the STEM fields in these places, and like how these role models could also influence the kinds of motivations for the girls to get into STEM fields.
Okay, so thank you so much, Evelyn, for that. I think I'm going to just let Olive comment or deliver her question, and then we can just talk about that specific question as well as Olive's. Okay.
Hello? Yes, I'm asking a question. Do you guys, I understand that, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Yes, I was asking myself if these STEAM programs, do you guys operate also in Africa, or do you have want to operate people who want to be partners, to partner with you in Africa? Do you guys operate in Africa, or is just in the United States?
Sorry, Olive, I think I cut off on the last part of your question. So could I ask you just to repeat that, just the last part of that question?
Okay, yes. I am asking, I understand STEAM is like encouraging women or women or girls to study science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So I'm asking myself, do you, with your programs, STEAM program, do you have partnership in Africa? Are you willing to operate in Africa? Like, do you have, apart from South Africa, do you want to operate? If someone wants to partner with you guys, you see that there is a link between STEAM programs with the East Africa or something?
Okay, thank you so much for both of those questions. Okay, Evelyn, if you don't mind, I'm going to answer Olive's question first, and then we'll go back to the providing role models. Okay, so we're going to first talk about Olive's question. Okay, so our campaign really focuses on creating awareness just regarding gender equality, and then within different aspects of gender equality. So STEM is not even something that we're really that familiar with, because I have a legal background and so does Kiara. So we're not well versed in it. We aren't experts. We would love to be able to provide something like that, but where we would step in as a campaign is we would say, okay, like having a conversation like this is, let's talk about gender equality within those fields. Yes, we should create awareness around it. What is the status quo at the moment? Women are not being paid equally. They are underrepresented. Okay, so how do we fix this? How would we platforms in which we can have these discussions to fix this? And then this should be something that could be taken to the certain organizations who do promote STEM, in educational institutions, that their focus should be on driving gender equality in those fields. So our campaign is essentially just a social, it's really a social media platform. So we have a Facebook page that creates awareness around gender equality issues. We also are based in Africa. We're in South Africa, and we, from a, sort of a local grassroots level, we create awareness on our own campus, the University of the Free State. So we have certain campus awareness workshops, such as a hashtag He for She workshop that we hosted. We also had a 16 days of activism pledge on campus. So that's really what we do. We try and drive the conversation around locally and globally around gender equality awareness. We're not a social entrepreneurship project. We are not an officially registered NGO or NPO. So yes, it's really just a platform. It's a platform to create gender equality awareness. Although we're very open to resource maybe those people who are connected to STEM, gender equality in STEM, such as I know that there's an organization called We STEM, which is Women in STEM. So if you look up that organization online, I'm pretty sure that you'll be able to find people who specifically are involved in certain projects that promote STEM. Someone like Nisha would also be definitely a contact to be in touch with. So if you'd like us to put you in touch with her, we really could do that. And then I'm sure she knows other organizations that would like to promote gender equality in STEM. So that's really, like Kiara also said, helping you to partner with those organizations that can bring specific gender equality awareness. Yes, so that answers that question. And then Evelyn, you had the question of the role models. Shouldn't we be maybe providing these role models in certain, even if it wasn't maybe in STEM, even if it was in other sectors, maybe political role models, role models who are in top management and that sort of thing. And I think you are very right to highlight the need for that. And I don't think there are enough programs that do that, especially outreaches to girls in rural communities, because they are obviously not in an urban area where there are maybe more opportunities in certain career paths for women. So in the rural community, there's even far less than what there for opportunity for women than what there is in an urban community. And I don't think that enough outreaches have been sort of done for that. It's definitely something that maybe even our program could look into. So yes, definitely to take note of. And maybe we could that's something, even if it's that particular thing that we take out from this entire conversation, is how do we provide more female role models or role models for young women that are representative of, good or professional career paths, whether it be in STEM or other fields. So that's something definitely that, and I think even this speaks to the research that you do in a higher education institution. How many professors are even, I think it's also asking the question of, are these people also willing to give up their time? Are we asking them to give up their time, and are they willing to? Because perhaps they should be asked to some time. I think we have someone else who has just joined our conversation. But then, yes, okay. So I hope I did answer that question. If you would like to speak to us a little bit more about, role modeling, especially in higher education institutions, also please just feel free to send us a mail, inbox us on Facebook, join our Facebook page, and we can take the conversation from there. Okay, I will make my email address available on the chat as well if I haven't. I will do so very quickly. Okay.
While LJ's busy doing that, I also just want to add on the role model question, with the motivation of the role models, because you as a young individual, you don't really know, okay, this is where I want to be one day, but am I ever going to actually get there? Or how do I actually get there? and just being able to see someone in this prestigious position and saying, oh my goodness, this is actually plausible, this is something that can happen, and you see the steps that they've taken, and to be able to maybe speak to them, it would be an amazing opportunity for somebody, you know, even it's something with us as law students, if we clerk for certain judges or something like that, you read up on these judges and you see, geez, like, these people are amazing, how, you know, how am I ever going to get there? And then to actually be able to speak to them and see, okay, you know what, it's not that difficult, it's something that's I can do. That's so much more motivation than saying, okay, there's girls here or there's this over here, but actually having that personal connection helps so much more than just a status or a figure. So I think it's definitely something that we need to look into, and it's something that will help with the gender gap and women in so many different fields, not only STEM.
Thank you so much for your answer, because I think that, you know, when we are trying to generate new conditions, you know, or social structure that is very you know, male dominant because of the ideology, values, and all those meanings, I think that it's important to highlight that although that there is a few population of female in STEM, there are women who are doing something. There are people who has facing like a lot of these challenges, but they are, you know. So I think that it's important to try to connect with people who really would like to talk about their experiences, you know, because it's not the same that, you know, someone, for example, in my case in Mexico, it's not the same to compare yourself as a woman that is live in Europe or to live in the United States, because their conditions are different. And then if you find like a Mexican scientist and you show to the kids, you know, like, this people is from your own country and this woman has your own values, your social values, and they can do that. You know, I think that also that could increase the motivations and their awareness of what the professional pathway could be for them. So I think I really appreciate like your comment and to be here.
Definitely. And I mean, even to add on to that, I think it's so important for students and young individuals to be able to see that there are people in these positions, but also that they have failed at something, that they can see it's not always going to be perfect. There's going to be times where, you know, you fail a module or you get rejected, or because as an individual, you're constantly getting either rejected or you're getting put down, and you need to be able to know that, okay, it's gonna get better sometime. So it's always just nice to know that there's somebody that's made it and they've also gone through these trials and tribulations, that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Because it's easy to say, oh no, carry on, but it's easier to relate when somebody's showing you something tangible. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I was.
Sorry, that was my connection. Okay, I'm gonna put my.
Yes, I wanted just to emphasize on role model. So we need to do awareness of those women, to ask them, those women who went so far, who are successful with life, with their careers, to inspire young women. For example, when I feel like I'm down or something, what I just do, I watch videos from those women who are telling their stories, who are telling the way, what they went through to be who they are today. So we need inspiration. We need those women to tell us, yes, I went through this. It was not easy. I got a lot of rejections, but here I am today. so we can know, when you look at those women, you are like, oh, or even her, she went through this and she made it. So that inspires you and it gives you power and courage to go forward. So we need to ask those successful women to come up and inspire us. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for all that everyone has shared today in the Global Forum. And I think it really, what we can take out from this is something that is so tangible, is that we need to start asking the forerunners in even our own communities, those young women or women who are successful in whatever their profession is, to really just start speaking out to young people and the youth, and to motivate them. I think we've also, we've seen it work on other social media platforms where young women, women affected by sexual assault and violence, they share their stories. The minute a woman shares a story of some kind of form of discrimination or gender-based violence that's happened to her, she is, the minute she shares that story, she's really opening the door for other women to share similar stories, and then to find solidarity within that. So I think it facilitates a process of healing for those women. It facilitates a process of understanding of certain discriminations, of where other women, of what their situation is. Like Evelyn said, their social context in that different country, and it provides us with greater understanding for different perspectives on gender equality, because what it means for me could mean something completely different to Tiamo or to Olive or anyone else in this forum. So I think that's also very important. So let's just take that out specifically from this forum, is that we need to really speak to identify our role models, and ensure that they speak out, and ensure that we, in our own capacity, that we speak out, and that we really identify what is it about gender equality, what specific aspect is it that we'd like to achieve, and how would we do that in our own capacity. Right, so I think, and then thank you to Nisha, who can't be with us today, because that was just really a wonderful, inspirational video, and really it was so great that she could share that with us, and that we could initiate this conversation over the video that she shared. So any other questions that you may specifically have for Nisha herself, or if you'd like to get in touch with her, I'm sure that we could arrange that through our channels. So please just stay in contact with us, or join our Facebook page and stay in touch with our campaign through that social media platform. Okay, well, thank you again. Thank you everyone for being here. I think we have officially run out of time. So I will just hand over to Janine to say just a few closing words. But then from my side, I just wanted to thank everyone, and you must enjoy the rest of your day or evening, wherever you are in the world. Okay. Thanks for joining. Thanks, guys.
That was wonderful. Yeah, that was a great way to wrap it up. Thanks everyone for joining. Algie and Kiara, thank you for facilitating, coordinating the video with Nisha. That was really fantastic. And I do agree, like when it comes down to it, just being able to share what gender equality means to you, what working in STEM means to you. Like after listening to Nisha talk and explain what STEM meant to her, I was like, I wish everyone could share with the world like why they do the work that they do, what they value in it. I think it would just help us like bridge understanding, because I think everyone can relate. We often say like, oh, I'm not in this field, so I'm not really sure, I have anything to contribute, but I think people, what they value in their work is universal, and it's not necessarily like knowing this chemical compound like Nisha said. So hopefully you guys continue this conversation offline. I definitely encourage you to share the recording with your coworkers, family, classmates. We'll have 2 more webinars, as LJ mentioned, coming up. In the post-webinar email, I'll send out the links that have all been mentioned, the calendar for upcoming webinars. And yeah, I hope to see you all very soon again, and have a great weekend. Bye, everyone.